Thanks very much for joining us this morning on behalf of the 800 plus worldwide employees of Pacific Northern, the firm that I work for. We want to welcome you to our hometown, Dallas, Texas, and we want you to know we're glad that you're here. The purpose of this seminar this morning is to go over the top 10 list of mistakes that jewelers tend to make in their showcases. My name is Larry Johnson. I'm Senior Vice President of Business Development for Pacific Northern. We're based here in Carrollton, Texas. Pacific Northern is a 20-year-old manufacturer of displays and fixtures, visual merchandising items, luxury items. Our headquarters, as I said, is here in the Dallas area. Personally, I'm the author of this book, Complete Guide to Effective Jewelry Display, which was the textbook for visual merchandising classes within the GIA group. I'm happy to tell you that it's number 1,314,723 on the Amazon bestseller list. Buy a copy, the royalties help put my grandkids through college. So let's get started. A lot of people ask me what constitutes a good jewelry display or whether a jewelry display is the right display to use or not. And I will just tell you that everything we do as we're looking at the types of displays that independent jewelers should be using applies to whether or not it's effective. It isn't so much a question of whether or not I like it or I like those colors. It's a question of does it sell more merchandise. And as far as I'm concerned, if a display is beautiful but it doesn't move the goods, then it's not the type of display that we want to be using. So that's the only criterion we use. And does it allow us to sell more, and does it allow us to sell more at better margins? So let's just keep that in mind. One of the points that a lot of people mention to me is looking at displays that hold their jewelry. We're pretty big on the idea that displays are not designed to hold jewelry, they're designed to present jewelry. And the purpose of a display is to help you sell it. We don't want that merchandise there for a long period of time. That's what museums are for. So the main goal that we're trying to cover today is, does it move the goods? That's all that matters. So let's get started with number 10 on the list. Let me also say that these are not necessarily in a particular order of priority. There are 10 things that you might want to think about. So number 10 is not having a display plan, and I'll explain what a display plan is in just a slide here in a moment. But if you do not have a plan for how you are displaying your merchandise, then you really don't have a sales plan for how you're going to sell it. You're forcing the customer to interpret, to work harder, to understand what it is you're showing them. It's not as simple as here's the piece in the case, you like it or you don't. You know from years of experience that you can influence what somebody likes. That's where salesmanship comes in. And your ability to influence what they like and our ability to make the displays influence what they like is part of that overall plan. Let me tell you that at our firm, we do the displays for just about every major retailer, big box store, chain jewelry store. Those are all ours. And I can tell you after sitting in on a lot of those meetings, they have a display plan. So it's important that if they're going to develop a plan on how they're displaying their merchandise, I think it's important that we do one too. And again, we'll help you with that. But let's talk about what's involved in that. A display plan is the premeditated thought that you give to the way you want to display your merchandise. It's not just putting it all in there, it's putting it all in there with a purpose. What is it we're trying to say, and what impression do we want the customer, when they are in the store, to have of our store or of that particular part of the store? Because as I'm going to explain in a second, you can have different display plans for different parts of the store. So how we display our merchandise supports this impression. So you come back to what is the message that we want to convey. And some common messages that you see every day are we have a broad selection, or we have really good prices in our store, we have a lot of exclusive or unique merchandise, we have really high quality. Or, as is typical with a lot of independent jewelers, you exude a great deal of confidence to the customer that they can be comfortable and confident when they buy from you, and they're not buying from an unknown. And that's a major part of it. So in the showcases, we have to decide which ones of these, either in the store on an overall basis or in each individual case, what am I trying to say here? And the key is trying to avoid conveying multiple messages, because when you try to say, hey, I've got great quality, it's the best price, I've got a big selection, when you start promising all of those things, typically what happens with the customer is they stop believing it. You really need to focus on a couple of things that you hang your hat on, and it should be those things that people think of when they think of your store. So let's just go through some of these. Selection. Exhibiting or having a display set up that shows a very broad selection, being known as the store in town with a broader selection. That's a great place to be if you can pull that off. It's expensive from an inventory standpoint, but if you can do that, that's great. It does not, however, automatically mean that you have to have thousands of pieces of merchandise in the showcase. What it does mean is that you have to have enough pieces in the showcase to make an informed choice. And what's interesting, and I brought this book somewhere. This is a fantastic book, and I'll have it at the booth. It's called The Paradox of Choice, and it's by Professor Barry Schwartz from Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania. And what Dr. Schwartz actually says is that if you give people too many choices, you can immobilize them, and you can prompt them to not make an informed decision. It's a little bit like, do you want to go out to dinner? There are 100 restaurants in town. Which one of the 100 do you want to go to, or do you want to go to one of these 4? It's easier to pick from the 4 than it is from the 100. And Dr. Schwartz gave an example. Well, we're just talking about too many pieces can overwhelm a customer to feel like they don't know how they're going to decide. The example that Dr. Schwartz gave in this book that I found really interesting dealt with a specialty store that was selling jam. And they got 6 jars of jam and set it out on a counter, and they offered free tastings. The first time they did this, they offered 6 jams, and if you liked a particular jam, you got a coupon good for $1 off. It was so successful, they decided to expand it the next time and run it with 24 different types of jam, same dollar coupon, same table, same idea. The first time they ran it, they sold 30% of the people who tasted the jam. The second time they ran it, they sold 3%. Dr. Schwartz's logic is that with 6 types of jam, you can make an informed decision. You feel like you've seen the whole range. With 24 kinds of jam, you find yourself thinking, well, maybe the next one will be better, or maybe the next one beyond that. And it goes to the point of immobilizing somebody where they decide, well, I just can't decide. I'll decide later, and they walk. If that's happening in your store where you've got a broad selection, might it be that you're offering so many choices that they can't make up their mind which one they like the best, and instead of taking 2, which would really be nice, they don't take any. If you are going to show a big selection of merchandise in your store, all I can suggest to you is you try to do it in some way other than this. When you line things up and you equalize all of the merchandise, people tend to go down the rows and they scan the goods, they pick up speed as they go, and they tend not to make a purchase. Having a big selection can be a wonderful asset in a store. You just have to be careful how you merchandise it. And that's a longer discussion. Stop by, we'll be happy to talk about it if that's what you want to do. Windows are a great place to show a broad selection, because in the window, what you're doing, most people don't actively try to necessarily sell from the window. They try to entice someone into the store to buy. The purchase happens inside the store. So the window communicating the concept of a broad selection is great. Again, you don't want to overwhelm them, but they're going to sit there and think, there's got to be something in here that I'll like. So windows are a great place to show a broad selection.